Hey everyone, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, that website address for you is theclinicaltrialsguru.com. We're joined by a guest guru, regular guest guru, the one and only Mr. Darshan Kulkarni. He is an attorney, a pharmacist, an educator, an author, all kinds of other things. He's also a blogger, and he's a regular guest on our show. He focuses on clinical trial and pharma law, and he's very knowledgeable. You're going to see him on this blog a lot. And I also ask you to check out his blog. Where is it, Darshan?
It's www.conformlaw.com. That's www.conformlaw.com.
I wanted to talk about GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and their recent announcement as of, I think it was a week ago, right? Brand new.
Probably was about a week ago, yeah.
They announced to the world that they're going to be more transparent with their clinical trial data and the clinical trial results. And when I first saw the headline, I thought, okay, this is great, but why should we applaud them if all they're doing is following the regulations, which is you have to report your study results on clinicaltrials.gov, right? And 80% of studies are not being reported, so why should we applaud them? That's what I thought. Then I tweeted with Darshan, and he filled me in on the details and told me I was irresponsible for. He didn't mention that part. But anyway, so why is it so important what they're doing? Is it really more than just them following regulations?
So, as you may remember, a few weeks ago, we actually did a whole presentation on clinicaltrials.gov, and we talked about it a little bit further. So the timing of it is really interesting.
Yeah.
As you may remember, the FDA recently came out and said that, I guess it was HHS that said that the FDA will have primary responsibility of clinicaltrials.gov as opposed to the NIH. So clinical trials is sort of taking off more and more in the U.S. At the same time, you've got this whole patient-centered movement where everyone wants to allow patients more access to data. And we talked a little bit about the Lilly COI, where they are providing access to clinicaltrials.gov, and they're giving their own information and making it available to the public. GSK took that recently, as we just discussed, to a new level. And what they said is that clinicaltrials.gov requires us to tell everyone what our study results are. It's usually done via summary, and we have to put out just basic facts about what we did, what happened, and the adverse events, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I was going to get into that. What kind of, like, I'm sure they want adverse events, and do they want, like, percentage of effectiveness versus placebo, like stuff like that?
Yeah, it tends to say you need to provide the data, but you need to provide it within X amount of time. And there are limits to the amount of time what data needs to be reported. Not every clinical trial needs to be reported. So there are limitations to that. In light of the patient-centered movement, GSK said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to be more than corporate citizens. We're going to actually take a step and say, we will provide you with the information we have, not only what's required by clinicaltrials.gov, but more than that. What we're going to do is we're going to provide you with anonymized patient-level data. That way, a couple of things happen. Number one, you actually can see what is happening with our patients. Obviously, we won't violate HIPAA, we won't violate the High-Tech Act, but you will see patient-level data. There are certain advantages to the patients. They aren't just basing their discussions off of summaries, they're actually getting the actual data. Number two, for GSK, there's a huge advantage because if there are a lot of lawsuits that say, oh, look, GSK hid this data, or Pfizer had this data, or Merck hid this data, we just didn't know this information out there. Well, now they're saying, we will give you the information if you ask for it. Not everyone will get the information, but based on a recent back and forth I had with a GSK GSK person actually on Twitter. They indicated that as long as you have are scientists looking for appropriate scientific information, you just put in a request to an independent review board, and they will decide if you can have the information.
So this is separate from what they're releasing for the patients.
No, this is the same thing that they're releasing.
Oh, okay.
About the patients. It's about the patients, not for the patients.
Oh, so it's mostly for scientists and other researchers.
Right. So the idea is, what would a patient do with data that really wouldn't be of? A lot of this is going to be scientific data that's not created for the intention of patients to use.
Because I'm glad I'm interviewing you on this, because I thought it was to help the e-patient movement and all that stuff. So this is not really about that, right?
As it currently exists, not quite.
Oh, okay.
But again, they said that if it's done for appropriate scientific research, what that means, we'll find out soon. I don't know if GSK has completely figured out what that means internally as well. Because a lot of these things develop themselves. So we don't have all the information yet. Again, that information has to go to... again, I want to be clear, this is my understanding of what GSK has put out there. So
sure.
They may come back and say, you know what, we actually have a full thing on patient-centered movements, and Darshan, you misrepresented it, but I'm just basing it off of the discussions I've had. And
well, then we'll just countersue them for emotional distress. Right?
There we go.
Yeah.
But the idea being that they want to say, we have information, we are a repository of health information, and we're going to make it available. I did ask, well, what happens if a competitor wants the information? I fully expected them to say, well, then they don't get it because they're competitors. Their response was, as long as it's a legitimate scientific request, they can have it.
Wow.
I was surprised by that.
So it's a legitimate request to make a drug that will crush your drug?
I assume that won't fit the definition of legitimate scientific request. But who knows? But I think that there are going to be some major issues, and I was actually asking them, I would love to get their compliance or their patent lawyer's viewpoint on this, because there are certain things called patent bars. And what that means is if certain information is out in public, you can get a patent on it at a certain point.
You said patent bar?
Yeah.
Oh, like being barred from something.
Yeah. They're timelines. They're known as patent bars. B-A-R-S.
Okay.
Give me a second. I'm going to sneeze again.
That's okay.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. So, patent bars will prevent your patent from being issued if that information is available to the public before you actually get the patent or ask for the patent. So if I assume that there's going to be a delay between the time the information becomes available to you and the time that they make it available to the public. So what would that timeline be? Because as you probably know, Dan, when you sign a CTA, for example, it always says there'll be a publication barrier of 6 months, a year, 3 months, depending on who you're talking to.
Right.
A lot of it has to do with exactly what we're talking about here, which is I don't want this data to become public because I need to patent it in time.
But now it's understandable. They have to protect their investments.
Exactly. When I was in-house counsel, some of the patents that we were working on, just to get them in, took us over a year. So there has to be some kind of timeline, some kind of delay built into the system. But they haven't talked about that yet. The other thing to look at is a lot of these products, when they start out, they sound like great ideas. Then you take them further along, and you realize it's a $150 million product. $150 million to you and me sounds like a lot of money, but to a company like Pfizer or GSK, it may not be, because they may say, you know what? For us to maintain our business, a product must be at least $250 million worth. Otherwise, it's not worth it for us. We just shelve it. But you don't know which products you're going to shelve until further along the food chain, or until a certain point you decide. So putting out data before you decide what you're going to do with the product may actually be counterproductive. So you can't then out-license it because the data is already out there. You can't in-license it Well, you can't do much with it because the data is already out there. So how are they going to control that will become critical.
Mm-hmm.
So so I'm going to be interested in seeing how their patent lawyers are going to say we can release certain data, but it has to meet these timelines.
Yeah, and I wonder. I mean, I'm a little critical. I wonder how much of that is going to be used as an excuse. Well, we can't release this one, just because it's like the negative data or something, right?
Well, you know the negative data will come out anyways via clinicaltrials.gov.
Well, it's supposed to.
You know that there are fines of over $10,000.
Yeah, yeah. But also, there's like, I mean, as we reported, like something like, I don't know the number, but most clinical trials are not reported.
Yeah, I believe the last number I heard was 22 to 24% are the only ones that are reported.
Yeah, so I mean,
Not.
well, hopefully the FDA will get more involved with that, taking over, and I think they will. So maybe this was a response due to that, because they're gonna have to get more transparent anyways, and they
Maybe
might as well take the promotion, right?
number one, they might as well take the promotion. Number two, it may be they say, you know what, the value was in the summary. The individual data isn't that valuable anyways.
Right, yeah,
So if we're going to have to disclose the summary, then might as well disclose the rest of it as well.
right.
So who knows? I don't know what their thought process was, but I would be very curious to know what their thought process was.
We gotta pick their brains. I'll send me that guy on Twitter. I'll try to get after him or her.
Or her. The person actually gave me. They said it's best to actually have a conversation, so they sent me to a web page that has 3 or 4 people on there, and they said that you want to follow up with one of these guys. So I'll send you that page itself.
You think they'll be willing to come on Spreecast
We'll find out,
and
right?
have the servers crash on them? We make fun, but hopefully this is a good thing. It sounds like a positive thing, and
Yeah.
we'll see it. Like Lilly, shout out to them, Lilly COI. They'll probably follow suit.
Yeah, I would imagine that, which is why I want to understand what GSK is thinking,
Yeah,
because I'm sure they've had these discussions internally,
right,
and
right,
still they made the announcement they made, which means that other companies are going to say, if GSK can do it, why can't we?
right, right.
Then they're going to have these internal discussions saying we're weighing the risks, weighing the benefits. If GSK can do it, why can't we? And they may either land up saying yes or no.
Right.
But if you understand GSK's reasoning, that might start applying across the board. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see. Thank you, Darshan. I want to give a shout out to our Clinical Trial Guru producers. If you want to be a producer, it's $99 for a lifetime membership. It's ridiculous, as long as I'm alive. Or if I pass away and people take over the site after me, you'll still be a producer. So it's Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Erdhart Clinical Trials, Patrick Stone from Tradestone LLC, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, and South Coast Clinical Trials. Thank you very much, and Darshan. Anything else on this?
I'm good, actually, but if we have any more updates, let's do another interview and talk about it further.
We will. Thank you very much, Dan and Darshan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com.